listening to an Iraq Currency Watch podcast.
Well, hello, Sam. How are you doing?
Hey, Nash. I'm doing excellent.
Well, we're here again talking about a redenomination of a currency, and this time it's Iran, and last year it was Venezuela. But Iran has planned to drop 4 zeros from their currency. So, again, they're calling it a redenomination. They're using the term delete the zeros or drop the zeros, cut the zeros, slash the zeros. There's a whole bunch of different names from different articles that are basically saying delete the zeros, but it all means the same thing, a redenomination.
Right. Yeah, do you remember that article I wrote a few years ago called Deleting the Zeros?
I believe you wrote a couple of them.
Yeah, that's true. I did. Deleting the zeros and then deleting the zeros too. But in the first post that I did, I listed 8 different currencies, and I linked to all the different articles about their monetary change. And Nigeria said, the article said they're removing zeros or dropping 2 zeros. With Turkey, it says lop 6 zeros. Drop 6 zeros. Venezuela said lop off 3 zeros. Afghanistan said drop some zeros. Iran, in their previous redenomination, it said take 3 zeros off, slash 3 zeros, remove 3 zeros. And that may have been talking about the same plan. I don't know. Zimbabwe, it said lop 10 zeros, or removing 10 zeros, and that didn't really work out too well. Romania said slash 4 zeros, and the article for Russia said lose 3 zeros. So they're all talking about zeros, removing zeros in one form or another. And the same thing happened in Venezuela last year, and now we're seeing the same thing with Iran.
Yep, and basically this is the same plan or type of plan that Iraq plans to do. When they talk about delete the zeros, drop the zeros, remove the zeros, slash the zeros, cut, chop, whatever, it's all about the redenomination of the currency.
Right, where they take the current currency that's in circulation and phase it out and replace it with a new currency with fewer zeros.
Yeah, that's what they've been talking about in Iraq since actually 2006. They wanted to remove the zeros all the way back then. There's articles all over the place where that's where they started talking about removing the zeros due to hyperinflation.
Right. Yep. And for some reason, the gurus have convinced people in the dinar community that removing the zeros is a revaluation instead of a redenomination.
Well, you've got several articles that say that that's one of the things that people are all confused about is the difference between what a redenomination is and what a revaluation is. You know, we all know what a redenomination is.
Back when I was running my blog, that's why I was trying to drive that home to people, what the definitions are for revaluation and redenomination. Because if you get confused on that, then you're going to interpret these articles incorrectly.
And then gurus seem to do a good job at confusing people over the very same issue about a redenomination and a revaluation. And then, of course, you got the other folks from outer space or galaxies, Galexians or alliances or whatever. I mean, they're just too far gone to, have reality hit them a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the difference between a redenomination and a revaluation are exactly that, 2 different things.
Right.
A redenomination is where you change the currency, and a revaluation is where they move the currency either up or down a little to adjust for inflation.
Right. And they've done that in Iraq several times. From 2006 till 2009, they made several revaluations of a percentage, 1 or 2%, over a 2-year, actually it was a 26-month period. They went to what they called a crawling peg. And incrementally, they bumped the value up. Just about every month, they bump it up about 1%. Because they were trying to get inflation under control, and this was their strategy to accomplish that, and it worked. They got inflation down under 10%, and then they went back to their policy of exchange rate stability. But those were revaluations. There was no new currency issued. They just changed the exchange rate on a frequent basis. But they're not doing that now. Every year or two, you'll see some change in the dinar's value, but not like it was 10 years ago when they were changing it every month.
Right.
Actually, nowadays, they're dropping the value. The last 2 changes have been devaluations instead of revaluations. It's actually losing value.
Hush. People don't want to hear that. That goes against what the gurus are saying.
Right. It's going the wrong direction. As a matter of fact, I've got an outstanding wager with Caperoni that I told him the next move would be a devaluation. He says they're going to go to a float, and so the next move is going to be a revaluation. A revaluation is when the value goes up. A devaluation is when the value goes down. But both are done by a decision from the central bank.
Right.
So if the next move is a revaluation, then let's see.
You owe him a pizza.
I guess I owe him a pizza, and if it's a devaluation, then he owes me one. I don't know how we're ever going to work that out because he's anonymous. I have no idea where he is or anything.
I'm sure he'll work it out to where he'll send you that pizza over go to a pizza place and he'll just pre-order it for you or something like that. Have you figured out what kind of pizza you want yet?
Well, I know I don't like anchovies. And I don't like jalapenos. So other than that, I can pretty much eat just about anything. So Caperoni, if you're listening, no anchovies and no jalapenos. And the next move, I don't know if they're going to do a move this year or not, but I'm sticking with my prediction. The next move is going to be toward 1,200 to the dollar, which would be a devaluation.
Yeah, from everything that's going on in Iraq, if you look at all the news articles and everything else, I mean, when they say they're maintaining stability with the currency, they've been doing it for the last 10 years. So they're actually doing something that they're saying they're going to do. Despite ISIS and all of the economic downfalls and upfalls and whatever else you want to call it, they have maintained the currency exchange rate.
Yeah,
only had a few little adjustments, but that's nothing to write home about.
January 2000
speculator.
In January of 2012, they moved it from 11.70 to the dollar to 11.66 to the dollar. So that was a revaluation. And the reason they did that was because of all the coalition forces that left at the end of 2011, turning in their dinar and taking out dollars, which weakened the dinar, and they had a spike in inflation. So their way of bringing the inflation rate back down was to revalue just from 11.70 to 11.66. It was just a revaluation of 1/3 of 1%, but it seemed to work. And they kept it there for another year and a half, I think, until they went from 11.66 up to 11.84. And then it went from 11.84 to 11.90, but as you explained to me, that wasn't really a devaluation. It was just a reconfiguration.
Yeah, they're adding their fees to that, between 11.84 and 11.90, and I think it's actually 11.82. But it depends on whether you're reading the buy and sell and all of that stuff. But basically, the rate in Iraq, and it's confirmed by the IMF report, is 11.82. And they're projecting that it's going to remain there to the year 2024. So that's
really?
5 years. Yeah.
They're saying it's going to remain at its current exchange rate for another 5 years.
That's what they're saying. They've got it in the Article 4 consultations. You can go down and look at all the graphs and pages and everything else that give you all the financial reports and all the projections. Now, the projections just aren't done by the IMF. It's also done with Iraqi officials. So when you look at all the graphs and charts and everything else, you can look at the bottom and it'll tell you whether it's done by just the IMF or whether it's done by the IMF and Iraqi officials, or whether it's done by some outside agencies. They've got a few graphs in there and charts that show that the conclusions are from other outside agencies as well. So
now here's the question I would ask. If there's no change in the exchange rate for the next 5 years, are we still going to have Caperoni and Frank and Adam Montana and Breitling and all these gurus? Are they still going to be out there talking this thing up? Are people still going to be invested in the dinar for another 5 years with no movement?
Well, all those gurus that you mentioned are all making money. Frank makes money from his VIP memberships. Caperoni says he doesn't make money, but he does post on a site that requires a donation in order to become a member. You're looking at Breitling. He's selling trusts or anything like that. You have some of the newer gurus like Mr. Brando. I mean, you have to join the Patreon club, and there's a fee for that. So all of these gurus have incentive to tell you a few things, basically dangle the carrot in front of you, because the more they dangle that carrot, the more you're going to spend on their sites for whatever reason, whether it's a membership or whatever, and they make the money.
So what you're saying is if there's still money to be made, they'll still be around.
If that's exactly what I'm saying. TNT, I mean, Tony, I mean, Ray, every call you hear that same caller, 610, putting out, hey, donate to Ray to keep the calls going. But yet they turn around and say, oh, it's going to RV this weekend or Monday or whatever. And if you think about it, if it's going to RV within the next day or two, why do they need donations to keep the sites going? I mean, everybody who's going to obviously everybody, if it's going to RV, they're just going to disappear. There's no reason to have a site. But they still want donations for their sites and memberships for their sites, despite the fact that everybody says that the RV is imminent and it's going to happen. But from a lot of the research that I've done, you cannot find anywhere where it says Iraq is going to revalue their currency overnight, and especially at the rates that these gurus are spewing out. Nowhere. And the math is pretty simple. You have the reserves, you have the money supply, you divide them up, and it tells you exactly what the rate's going to be. It's a simple formula that doesn't get any more complicated than that. And basically, if you do that, you'll find that the rate, right where it's at today, is right where it should be.
Okay, so let's just simplify this for the sake of our listeners. You take the amount that's in their foreign currency reserves. What is that amount? What do you know what the latest figure on that is?
Well, we've had some discussion over at Dinar Daily. Let's just go ahead and pick 60,000. Or not 60,000, excuse me. It's 60 billion in the reserves.
Right, okay. 60 billion in the reserves. And what's the money supply?
It's around 70 trillion. That's with a T.
Okay. All right. So what you do is you divide 60 billion by 70 trillion, because that's how they're backing their currency with their foreign currency reserves. Their foreign currency reserves are 60 billion. Their money supply, at least their M1 money supply, which is what they've been backing, is about 70 trillion. So you do the math on that, and it comes out to around 0.00085 or 86, somewhere around there, which is the current valuation of the dinar.
That's correct.
Which means that they really don't have any room to move the value up as long as they're backing it. Now, if they decide, well, we're just going to change the way we're doing this, we're only going to back at 50%. Now, if they only back at 50%, then that would give them the capacity to bump it up to, say, 0.0014 or something like that. But in the past, if they've got more in the reserves, they just print more money. If they've got less in the reserves, they print less money. But they've tried to keep that ratio between the reserves and the money supply around 100%, around the M1 money supply figure. They've kept that around 100% now, as long as I've been watching it. So as long as that's the case, then there's really not a whole lot of room for any movement. I try to explain this to people. It's just basic math. It's just multiplication and division. And for some reason they think, well, they've got all kinds of hidden assets that they're not showing us. And they're going to use these hidden assets to back the currency. Have you heard that?
I've always heard that. And when you go and try and find some sort of article or documentation on that, you really don't see it. Now, on the gurus, they'll tell you, oh, it's out there, or there it is, and this is what it amounts to, or whatever they want to say. But when you press them for information, they all of a sudden, they'll either block you or start calling you a negative Nelly. I mean, you're trying to stop people from gaining money in this investment. I mean, they just put you down and try to make you look like a fool when in reality they're the ones that are the fools. But they do it for a reason. They make money.
My question is, if they've got all these hidden assets that they're going to use to revalue the currency, then why are they going to the IMF for loans? You know, you're borrowing money from the IMF when you could just take these hidden assets and either revalue the currency or sell off the hidden assets to avoid needing a loan.
Yeah. And the loans just aren't from the IMF. I mean, Japan's loaning them money. The Netherlands are loaning them money. China's loaning them money. I mean, you can look at articles all over the place where they are continuously getting loans from various sources. And a lot of it is to help out with the reconstruction.
Yeah, the reconstruction is going to go on for a while.
Yeah, well, you know, they could just use those hidden assets, as you'd say, and you know, rebuild the country. But obviously they're not doing that either. They'd rather have the people go without electricity. Electricity is still a problem there. It's summertime, and so obviously we're going to, you know, probably start hearing about the drought again. So they don't want to, you know, supply people with water. So where's the outrage from the people saying, well, if you've got all these hidden assets, why aren't you using it to, you know, get the electricity on 24/7 or to have the water running continuously? Yeah. So obviously there's nothing coming out of Iraq from the people there talking about hidden assets.
Right. We just had this discussion the other day with a guy at Dinar Daily about gold. He said they had $4 trillion worth of gold. And I pointed out to him that the entire gold supply in the world only comes to 7 trillion. So that would mean that Iraq has the majority of the gold in the world. And it just turns out that his math was off a bit. It's $4 billion worth of gold instead of 4 trillion. And the $4 billion in gold that they have is part of their foreign currency reserves.
Yeah, I read that, and he was saying it wasn't. But then again, I grabbed a screenshot of what is actually put out in their financial statements, that gold is part of the reserves, and we haven't heard from him again.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you and I have been at this for a while. We've heard all of these arguments, all of this guru misinformation, and debunked it time and time again. But you've always got these new people coming into it who haven't come across the research that you and I have done, and Marcus and others have done 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. So every once in a while we just have to remind people about the fact that they don't have these hidden assets. They can't back their currency with oil. They got to back it with their foreign currency reserves. The money supply is not going down. I don't care what Breitling tells you. We're going to give everybody a link in the description to the financials on the CBI website so that they can see the money supply is still going up. They're not reducing it in preparation for this big RV. These kind of lies have been around in our community as long as I came into this in 2010, so it's been 9 years now. And I've heard these lies over and over and over again, and when you do a little bit of research, they don't hold up.
Well, I'm glad you're going to be putting the links in the video because, I mean, that's one thing that a lot of us do is we supply links to our information that we're getting and passing by to people who are interested. If you go to any of those guru sites, you're not going to find any links to back up what they're saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, Caperoni, to be fair, Caperoni does provide links to IMF articles, but they don't say what he claims that they say.
That's true.
They don't say they're going to go on a free float, but his logic is, well, that's what they mean because that's the only way to do what they say they're going to do.
Yep, and actually he's changed that since you had that pizza bet going on. He doesn't no longer say free float. He says it doesn't matter what kind of float it is, as long as it's a float. So he's changed that a little bit, like he has over the years.
They're already on a managed float. So if he says that they're going to go to a managed float, they're already on a managed float. So it's real easy to make a prediction about something that's already been done.
Yeah.
So anyway, but yeah, we'll have plenty of links for you guys in the description. If you have any questions, you can make a comment on the video, or you can meet us, either me or RamblerNash at dinardaily.net. We'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
And provide you with links. And if we don't know, maybe we'll go ahead and look it up and provide an article for you. Dinar Daily has lots of articles that give you the current situation that's going on in Iraq. It's a news site, basically. It also posts all the gurus, failed predictions and has for years. So if you want to keep up with the latest gurus, you certainly can. And, you'll understand that after you keep reading their stuff over and over and over again, that these guys are just idiots. There's no way that any of the information they're trying to provide to people is accurate in any way whatsoever.
Yep. So just we're not going to make this call too long, but we just wanted to reiterate that what is happening right now with Iran. By the way, when is this redenomination in Iran? When is this taking place?
Well, they've been talking about redenominating the zeros for Iran for quite a number of years, but in January of last year, or this year I believe it was, they mentioned that they were going to cut 4 zeros, and just recently it passed Parliament. So obviously once it passes Parliament, they've got the okie dokie to go ahead and get it going. But the next step after it passes Parliament is they'll go ahead and design the currency. If they're going to design, new currency or reuse old ones and just put new numbers on it and new dates or whatever, they'll announce it to the public that this is going to happen so that everybody is very familiar with what it's going to look like and what you need to do in order to exchange your old currency for the new currency. So that process will take a little bit of time to do, but I haven't seen where they announced a date where they're actually going to put the new currency out. I know last year when we did this call in Venezuela, they said they were going to do it. Parliament passed that they were going to do it. They started putting out pictures of what the new currency was going to look like, and even instructions for storekeepers of what they need to do until they phase out the old currency.
Okay.
So all of that stuff still needs to take place. In Iran, like I said, Parliament just passed it. So how far along they are with the designs or getting bids on printing the currency, I mean, that's anybody's guess.
Are they going to give it a new? Are they going to give it a new name?
I believe they are. I believe they're going to call it the Toman and not the Rial. So
okay.
That's a new name to the currency, or it's an older name to the currency because I believe they've used it before. So, but in any case, it's going to be a new currency, and it's going to reflect the dropping of the 4 zeros.
Because that's what a redenomination is. They phase out the old currency and they replace it with a new currency with fewer zeros. And that's the same thing Iraq has been talking about since, what, 2006?
2006. I mean, you can find articles, and I'm going to go ahead and post them up on Dinar Daily. I found a couple of articles from Radio Free Europe. I mean, that's the one place that people tend to post this article from Radio Free Europe that says revalue, but actually it means redenominate. So I'm going to go ahead and put a couple of those articles up that actually say they're going to redenominate. And in one of the articles or two, it actually says how it's going to happen. Those 25K notes are going to become 25 notes. Everybody in Dinar land thinks those 25K notes are still going to remain 25K notes, but they're not. And these are from officials saying that they're going to be, a 1,000-to-1 exchange between the notes.
Right.
That's what dropping the 3 zeros is, or a redenomination. But the plan is to run both currencies for 10 years.
Right, and then the IQD, you're talking about Iraq here, right?
We're talking about Iraq, not Iran in this case. They're going to drop the 3 zeros like they've been talking about.
All right, so both the currencies will have a value at their respective rates until the IQD is demonetized at the end of that time frame.
At the end of the 10 years, yeah. Now, there's some questions as far as when they're going to actually pull all the notes off the streets. But the latest from Iraq is that they're going to run both currencies for 10 years. So I would expect that after 10 years, they'll demonetize the old currency and they'll just be using the new currency.
Right. So as long as the IQD is in circulation, it's going to retain its current valuation at less than a tenth of a penny. The replacement currency would come in around 85, 86 cents. So the higher value will only apply to the new currency. The IQD that investors or speculators hold will retain its current valuation until it's demonetized.
That's correct. That's statements that are coming out of Iraq from CBI officials, and they've been saying that for over 10 years.
Which means that if you're holding dinar expecting a big windfall, you're probably not going to see any profit at all.
That's correct. I mean, unless there's some sort of inflation they need to control or the economic circumstances changes in any way, nothing's going to be really moving on it.
Right. Okay. So, like I said, we didn't want to hold everybody up too long. We just wanted to address this point about Iran, and I guess if another country comes along with a similar redenomination, we'll be doing another call. It usually happens about once a year. Somebody has to go through this process.
Yep, pretty much. I mean, like I said, put the links in the video. There'll be posts on Dinar Daily about deleting the zeros and what delete the zeros means. Whether they want to talk about whether it's a chop, a slash, a drop, a delete. They use various terms to all describe the same thing. It's a redenomination.